Hi, I'm Sian, one of the editors in the Manx Radio newsroom. And have you had to make difficult financial decisions because of the rising cost of living? The Isle of Man Financial Services Authority is warning that the increased costs are making us indulge in risky financial behaviour and putting us at a greater risk of falling victim to a scam. Lewis Foster has been speaking to the regulator's chief executive, Bettina Roth.
The pressure is, significant. As I said, we do continue to see increases, and it's really across the entire supply chain. So if it's groceries, if it's, energy prices, all of that, any, services have been affected. So we do continue to see that. And obviously for consumers, that means they continue to be stretched. And in light of the current environment, there is an increase, not just on the Isle of Man, but really globally, in fraud, in scams where fraudsters are trying to take advantage of people that are under stress and are looking, to make ends meet. So that is something that we're very aware of. And again, on our consumer awareness page, we do have a specific section for what to look out for, when it comes to fraud and scams and how to recognize those. So that's one aspect. And I think the other aspect is because household finances are stretched, that consumers might be tempted to make short-term decisions that in the long term could be detrimental. So, for example, not contributing to savings accounts, maybe to revisit insurance policies, all of that. So from our perspective, we do advise consumers to check with their service provider first before they make decisions that could affect their long-term financial position.
One can assume scammers are taking advantage of this situation. Who's most vulnerable and who are scammers particularly targeting?
Well, I think generally everybody is a target. I think the difficulty that we're facing, and again, being an island doesn't cut us off from that, is the attempts by the fraudsters at becoming much more sophisticated. So if you think about spear phishing, where frauds look like they're from friends, they're from family, they're from sources, colleagues, and again, that is a way in for fraudsters to attempt to get you to release personal information or make payments because you think it is a trusted source. And that is on the rise. I think generally there's better awareness of just very suspicious looking emails that come from a unknown source. But as I said, this spear phishing is something that is increasing, and I think all of us are vulnerable to those because you think you're dealing with a trusted source.
And we'll talk about good habits we can get into shortly. But first, tell us about some of the financial pitfalls that need to be avoided.
Yeah, so some of the pitfalls, as I was saying, is doing things that are not a good long-term habit. So, for example, feeling pressured to take a debt from money lenders that are not regulated, for example, or, as I said, to stop, insurance or pension arrangements because, there is the short-term pinch that, is obviously for the long-term financial health for the family is not probably the best option, but, could be seen as, I need to do that in the short term.
How many people have been reaching out to the FSA for support who might have fallen into some of these pitfalls?
So generally, we don't really have contact directly from consumers. And to be fair, that hasn't changed in this current environment of cost of living pressures. What we do tend to see is that consumers reach out to their service providers directly and then, have those discussions with them. But regardless of that, we have a more indirect role. We want to make sure that consumers are aware of what help is available, what advice is there.
So we'll go to good practice then. What should we be doing if we find, our money not stretching as far at the moment?
Yes. So I think, to revisit the budget, to revisit all the items that everybody spends money on and really categorize it, but for the items that, are must items like, rent and heat and electricity, those kind of matters. And then really looking at items, is there anything that we can, tighten up? I think that's important. And then equally, if that doesn't look good, then to seek help and discuss it with the service providers, to discuss it. Again, there's a number of agencies around the island that can help. For example, the Office of Fair Trading, has a confidential debt counseling service for consumers not to suffer in silence, but really to reach out and find the help they need and get assistance and to deal with these difficult issues.
Thank you, Bettina. And for anyone who wants to take a look at all the advice and the do's and do nots, where can they find more information from the FSA?
Yes, so it's directly when you go on our website, there is right at the top left, there is a heading that says consumer awareness, and there's useful tips and, again, links to other government agencies' websites as well.
So we've heard there from Ms. Roth, but do you actually feel more vulnerable to scammers? And have you had to change the way you spend because of the rising cost of living? William King headed into Douglas to speak to these shoppers.
Yeah, most likely are, just due to the fact that people are hungry for money. So if anyone's trying to advertise them for money, they're going to take it.
Have you noticed changes in prices and things?
Yeah, a lot. We're not from around here, so we live in London, so it's drastically changed.
Have you been to the island before?
Yeah, we've got family here, so we've come here before, but we've only been here a few hours today, so we'll see if the prices have changed at all since we last come.
As pressure increases, people will feel more like they need to find a way through their situation. Some of those may be mostly decent people, but decent people can be led to do things that they may disagree with. I think there's also some very large organisations and people across, and they're a very full, very powerful set of people, and that's a persistent problem.
Have you noticed the rising costs?
Yeah, I have, especially with spending and 3 kids. It's pretty difficult. Learning to budget and learning to bulk buy has been quite useful.
But have you had to make any difficult decisions?
Not really. I think sometimes I'll do an extra day at work, which I understand I'm privileged in that way, and I will do that, and I'll be more tired at home because it's quite physically demanding.
I don't think the cost of living crisis will make a difference to how often people get scammed, but I do think that scammers are getting more clever with the way they produce websites and malware and stuff. I think it's more about tech rather than about cost of living necessarily.
With the cost of living crisis, we're just wondering what sorts of things you've noticed in prices going up.
I think generally that prices are going up on everything. Even my little granddaughter has noticed prices going up on things that she wants to buy. So I think it's affecting everybody in that regard. Yeah. And then if you were always buying lower cost items, there's nowhere to go. You can't sort of scale down to a cheaper thing if you already were buying the cheapest you could.
Well, this is where we see people then have to make really difficult decisions, don't we, on things like, holidays are out the window for lots of people at the minute. What sorts of do you know of any difficult choices people have had to make? Have you had to make any yourself?
I suppose the worrying one is when you hear people talking about making choices about heating and stuff like that. Those are the ones that worry me, particularly the older generation. It's always a worry that they're not looking after themselves properly. More in the winter time, I think, especially, but that's a big concern to me, I think.
Do you think with rising costs, people are more likely to fall victim to scams?
Definitely.
Why do you say that?
Well, of course, everybody's trying to find out the best way to make their money work for them. And if someone offers you something for nothing, then it's true. But if it's something for nothing, it's probably going to be worth nothing, but we fall for it.
The rising cost of living is affecting everybody at the minute, isn't it?
Yes, it is, but it's affecting different sections of the community differently. I'm a householder, I don't have a mortgage, so these things don't concern me. Cost of living day-to-day costs, yes, they're going up. Energy's going up. So they do affect everybody, but I think it affects different sections of the community differently.
Have you yourself had to make any difficult decisions? Do you know anybody who has?
I know people who have. My family, my children who are of an age and a different generation. They certainly have had to look to how they spend their money and how they use it.
Thank you for making it to the end of the Little Manx Radio Newscast. You are obviously someone with exquisite taste. May I politely suggest you might want to subscribe to this and a wide range of Manx Radio podcasts at your favourite podcast provider, so our best bits will magically appear on your smartphone. Thank you.